Hey everyone, I'm Blake. Welcome to BM Sculptures. This week I'm going to turn an old wrench into a sword. Alright, let's get started. So here's the wrench. I picked this up at a flea market around 2 years ago for I think $3, and it's just been sitting collecting dust. So I want to turn this thing into a sword. I'm going to be using the Supra-One angle grinder. They sent me this to basically test it out and let you guys know my honest opinion of it. Now it comes with everything you need to get started, an abrasive wheel, a cutoff wheel, and a grinding wheel. And it has this trigger mechanism unlike any other angle grinder that I've used. It's actually extended in the back of it, and it's just very unique. Nothing that I've experienced yet, so I'm definitely interested in to see how this feels in my hand and how this thing works. I'm going to start by using my cutoff wheel to cut off both ends of this wrench and then do a quick changeover to the flap disc to take away the bulk material. There's this little raised part of this wrench right here, and I'm just going to clean that completely off using the flap disc. Now so far this angle grinder is working exactly as I hoped it would. It's got plenty of power at 12,000 RPMs. It's cutting through this thick steel like butter. And the change out of these wheels are quick and easy. The one area where I was initially worried about was that trigger mechanism so far back on the angle grinder, but it's actually not an issue at all. It's super comfortable. The only thing I wish it had was a locking on mechanism, which it could be a safety issue these days. I do have a couple angle grinders and only one of them have it, and it's really old, so I'm guessing it's a safety issue, but I wish that these new ones were able to have that as well. Once I'm done angle grinding, it's time to get down the files and get to a little more precision. And here I'm just kind of grinding everything down to the final thickness and shape that I want. And now it's time to start working on these edges, making sure they're sharp because I'm getting hungry and I need a little bit of a snack. So hopefully I can find something around here to eat. Ah, perfect. Now that I'm full, it reminds me I need to make a fuller on this sword, and a fuller is basically the indentation running right down the center on both sides of the sword or knife. And this was a bit nerve-wracking because I had to make a perfectly straight line using the angle grinder. Once I did that with the angle grinder, it was time for hours upon hours of hand sanding. And yes, I do have a Dremel tool, but for some reason I could not get the right bit in order to make this fuller. So this was completely hand sanded before finish sanding and then finishing it up on the polisher. Alright, who's ready for some woodworking? I'm going to make a completely custom all wooden handle using white oak and walnut. I'm going to throw them on my table saw, rip them down to dimension, and then put them on my compass miter gauge, and I'm going to actually cut multiple pieces to then put an inlay of the opposite wood in between. Now, that might be a little confusing. I probably made that super confusing, but you'll see in a second what I'm doing. For the inlays, I need to make some veneers, so I'm getting my scrap walnut and white oak here, and I'm going to make some really thin veneers. And I don't show it here, but I actually planed them down and made them nice and smooth and flat before cutting them to the final dimensions to then inlay in between the other cuts I already made. Now you get to see what I was finally trying to explain back there. So here's what I have. I have walnut with white oak inlays, and then on the opposite side I have the white oak with the walnut inlay. And then I do the glue up. I leave these to dry overnight, and then the next day I grab my belt sander to make sure all the surfaces are nice and smooth so then I can cut and shape them much easier. I'm using some 36 grit on this belt sander to really take away material quickly. Wait a minute.
What?
Something seems off here.
course.
You want to sand it with the grain, not on the edges. You want this thing flat so then you can work with a parallel surface. Duh! And here they are after a thorough belt sanding, nice and square and flat surfaces. Now I'm not going to lie, I do not know my sword anatomy. I have no idea what I'm making here. It's the little piece that goes in front of the handle. Maybe it's a guard. I kind of feel like it's a guard because it kind of guards your hand maybe. We're going to go with this is a guard. Here I'm making the guard and I'm kind of just winging it on the design and hoping that this looks good, and I might have to switch it up later or refine it. And here I'm just kind of using my little Dremel tool to carve away the spot where the sword is actually going to meet so it's perfectly flush. And then I drill the hole for the tang to go through. Ha, you like that? Tang. Yeah, real bladesmith here. So basically all of these will connect on the tang, which is that little metal piece sticking out on the back of the sword. I decided halfway through, hey, I want this thing round. So I made that round, and then I just threw together another piece of white oak with some walnut inlays, and I'm going to make a circle for the very end of the handle. And then it's onto the whetstone to make sure that this thing will kill.
Overall, your weapon will kill.
No, seriously, I just want to make this really sharp. I want it to be an actual sharp sword to where maybe I could open some letters or, slice some bananas or something like that. Who knows, but I want this thing sharp. Once it's sharp and I know it can kill,
it will kill.
it's time to do the final glue up and then the final shaping of the handle. And here I'm just using the rotary tool and hand sanding this thing down to final dimensions. Then the only thing left to do is put the finish on the wood, put some oil on the sword, and let's roll that finishing montage. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and please consider subscribing. If you're in the market for a new angle grinder, be sure to check out the Supra-One. I have a link and all the details for it in the description. This is Blake from BM Sculptures, and until next time, keep on making things.